The Tao of Self-Confidence, episode 807. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. Visit our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits. Well, hello, friend. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. I'm your host today, Sheena Yap Chan, and today I have an amazing lady on the show today. She is an entrepreneur, an award-winning humanitarian, and also Miss Asian Global 2020. And I'm really excited to have her on and share her story with us today on self-confidence. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Olivia Wong. Olivia, how are you today? Maybe you can fill in a little bit more about yourself to the listeners.
Hi, Sheena. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. So my name is Olivia. I was born and raised in San Francisco, and from a very young age, I knew that I was a rebel. Some of the young girls and also my parents would always call me pretty bossy when I was young, but that just meant I was headstrong. So from a very young age, I started to travel the world, and that's how I started my journey as a humanitarian. I worked in Syria and Fukushima after the nuclear disaster, in the global developing south, and a lot of different rural remote areas. Around the time I was 24, I moved to Vancouver, actually. That was around the time where Trump was elected in 2016, and I've been here ever since. And just recently this summer, I won a title of Miss Asian Global 2020. So I get to represent the Asian community in the United States and in Canada, and actually across the world.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, and congrats for winning the title. I think it's great that, you're representing, the North America, and I think that's great. And what's your cultural background?
I am Chinese, Cantonese by descent. So my mom was born in Hong Kong and my dad was born in mainland China, and they immigrated to the States before they were 20 years old. So I am the child of immigrants, and we were born in San Francisco, and most of my family is still in the Bay Area.
Thanks for sharing that. And Olivia, what would be your favorite self-confidence quote?
My favorite self-confidence quote is that before you can conquer the world, you have to conquer yourself.
Thanks for sharing that. And I love that quote. Yeah, because it's true. If we want change, we have to be that change, right? I always say that, especially when it comes to representation, right? As Asians in general, we're very underrepresented. But, the only way to do that is to be that representation, to go out there and just show yourself, speak your voice, showcase your talents, whatever it is, so that other people can realize it's okay to be who you are. So thanks for sharing that great quote. And in your own words, how do you define self-confidence?
I believe self-confidence is having an undeniable trust of yourself. It means to stand up for yourself when no one else will. It means to put yourself first and always to be compassionate and forgiving to yourself, even if the circumstances don't allow it. And I want to give you an example, and this is kind of a silly example, but I went on a camping trip a couple of years ago, and I was with a person who I was dating at the time and their friends, and I had just put some retinol on my face the day before and had this facial. I know this is a really simple, silly example, but so there I was on this camping trip out in the middle of nowhere. I had no makeup, no access to anything that would make me look nicer. And the next day when I woke up, because the retinol had reacted with the sun, my entire face broke out. I had such bad skin reaction and irritation that I couldn't even recognize myself in the mirror. And I was with people that obviously when you're dating someone new, you somewhat want to impress them. And I just remember looking at myself in the mirror the next morning, and I was so embarrassed because I couldn't hide any of the imperfections. I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, I have to be okay with me. I have to love myself so deeply right now that I'm okay with how I look, and I'm going to not hide, and I'm not going to look embarrassed, and I'm not going to make excuses for what happened. And there I was, completely, totally, in a sense, naked, right? Because I'm so used to wearing makeup. I'm a beauty queen, and I had all of these bumps and redness, and even my eyes actually, when you're crying for a long time and your eyes sort of shrink and you can't mask the look of that? Well, that's how I felt inside, and I still had to go out there and just be the most confident version of myself. And I remember from that day on, I thought, no matter what happens to me externally, I will always feel this good, because I did it that one time and it was so terrible, and it'll never be as bad as that.
Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that great story. It's just like, a good lesson to like just love who you are, love the skin you're in, regardless of what happens, because it can happen to any of us, right? And I know sometimes it can feel like it's the end of the world, but it's temporary, it'll go away, life goes on, and we keep moving forward. So thanks for sharing that definition. And Olivia, what was your life like before your discovery of self confidence?
I spent a lot of time comparing myself to other women. I would say that. I think the lowest point of my life when I was very, how do I say, when I lacked the most confidence was when I was in college, and it was my early 20s. And I just remember, one, I was bulimic and I was also anorexic, and I spent the majority of my day counting calories in my head. And I also remember that anytime that I would go out, whether it was, to campus or I was at lunch or I was out with my friends at night, I would always walk into a room and feel immediately small. Like the inside of me would just shrivel. And that feeling lasted into my mid-20s when began dating my new partner, who is like the love of my life, and we're such a good team for each other. But in my early days when I moved to Vancouver, I felt so small when I would go out, because in Vancouver people are so beautiful, a lot of people have plastic surgery, everyone's like externally very beautiful, and I just always felt like I wasn't good enough. Like I didn't match up to people. And I always felt so trivial in that sense. And I know this is something that a lot of girls and young women and even older women can probably attest to, but never feeling like the prettiest person in the room. And that's so strange because hello, again, I'm a beauty queen and I'm the person who has been validated for her external beauty and also internal beauty. But I would say the times that I've felt the smallest and the least confident are somehow always related to matching myself and comparing myself to other women. And usually that's at the beginning of a relationship with a male.
Thanks for sharing that. And, just growing up in a Asian household, I think the comparing game is always very strong, right? Families compare each other, whether it's with their kids or who has the nicest car, who has the nicest house. It's like everyone's trying to keep up with each other or try to like, one up each other, that it just never ends. And then when we grow up in that environment, like we're just doing the same thing, especially like you go on social media and you see all these perfectly curated photos and you're like, why don't I look like that? Why don't I have nice skin like her? Why don't I have the flat abs that she has? And we have to realize like sometimes those are filtered, right? And sometimes what you see on a photo doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth, right? I'm not saying every photo is like that, but just, sometimes you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. And I think, the more people are just vulnerable and just being able to share their truth, people will understand like, it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to, not always be perfect, because perfection is non-existent. So, what was that point in your life when you realized, you are more than enough, right? You are beautiful. You are confident. You can go out there and be who you are today. So what was that aha moment?
I had a couple, but I really want to touch on what you just shared because I think this is so important. I have a couple of young women in my life through different experiences, whether they be really close friends, girls I've mentored in the past. And I want to say that between the age of 18 and 25, especially with the rise of Instagram, there's such a strong push and pressure to, one, have big boobs, two, have a big bum. It's you can't even hide from the fact. And I know it sounds trivial, and I know it's not necessarily the most sophisticated or wise thing that I have to say, but I think to really call out how intense that pressure is to look a certain way. For example, for many years when I was in college, I had some form of body dysmorphia. I didn't like having a flat chest. It was so inherent to me that I would shame myself into thinking, maybe I should consider plastic surgery. And it's not just me. I've talked to so many young girls who are using Facetune and who are using, apps to modify their body and change their shape because the pressure is so high to, have a bigger bum, have really enlarged breasts. It's just ridiculous how much shame there is. And I remember my aha moment was that I was talking to my partner and I was expressing how angry I was, how I couldn't ever reach that sort of expectation. I could never reach that standard of beauty because I just am not born with it. And I also don't have a Western nose. And I would look at all of these pictures of pageant queens, and the Asian queens that have always won in international pageants, like Miss Universe, have that very thin, elongated Western nose. And I thought to myself, should I have a nose job? Like, should I change this? And there was a moment where this higher voice inside of me said, do not do that, because if you get a nose job, you are going to erase your culture. You will completely erase your Cantonese heritage. That's not you. That's not who you were born to be. And I think my aha moment was realizing that the beauty standards that are imposed on us, especially as Asian American and Asian Canadian women, are Western features. And there are other examples and role models that we can follow in this world that look like us, that actually take the shape of our bodies. You know, it is beautiful to be the way that I look. I don't have to look like a Kardashian to fit into this world. And I think that aha moment was so powerful for me because I could actually transcend all of the implications and expectations of Western media. And for me, that was when I became free, because now I don't worry about these kind of things. Sure, I contour my nose, but that's because I'm a makeup artist and I really like to do the transformation. Moving forward, the aha moments have really been realizing that anything that I'm unhappy with myself, I have to dig deep. Where does that come from? What belief does that come from? You know, what expectations were imposed on me? How can I redefine that for myself and actually maybe find some better role models that make me excited to live in the skin I'm in? That's another huge thing that I've learned is if you are looking at magazines, Instagram accounts, websites, pictures, and they don't make you feel good, delete them, unfollow, block. Do anything that you can to really cultivate this environment around you that really shapes you into feeling empowered and confident and sexy and beautiful. I think that's so important in this day and age.
Thanks for sharing that. And I totally agree. I mean, growing up in Canada, like Asian representation was like non-existent, right? And even myself, I wanted to name myself Heather, have blonde hair and blue eyes because that's all I saw on TV and on magazines and on billboards. And I thought being Asian was like not considered pretty because that's not what you see in the media. And, you know, it took me a while to realize like who I am is, you know, what makes me unique, what makes me beautiful. And it took a while to accept that, right? And like anyone else, it's a journey. You know, we have our ups and downs, but in the end, we have to realize who we are is what makes us unique, what makes us different, what makes us beautiful, what will make us stand out from the crowd, you know, speaking our truth, speaking up for ourselves and for others who are still not as confident enough to speak up. And I love that you mentioned all that. And because of your aha moment, what's your life been like now?
Joy, bliss, flow. I live in an expanded state of flow. It's a place where I wake up feeling very creative. I don't doubt myself. I deeply trust myself in all scenarios. And I also don't have to prove myself to anyone. And that is completely liberating to walk into a room, to stand on stage, to be in a podcast. And I trust that anything I say will be a perfect and accurate and authentic representation of who I am, because I'm not trying to be anything else. I'm just here being me and being true to myself. And with that, it makes me feel like I'm at peace, that there will never be a regret in my life because I was just true to who I am and I wasn't pretending to try to strive or prove to anyone that I was something else.
Thanks for sharing that. And, you know, to the woman who's listening to your episode, they may be in their own journey to self-confidence. What would be that one tip you would give to her?
I would say start with a list. Write a list of all of the things that you dislike about yourself, your limiting beliefs, things that you really wish no one would know. Then what I would ask you to do is flip that list. See if you can turn every single critical judgment of yourself into a positive affirmation and work on that list. Repeat it out loud. State those affirmations out loud. Confidence is not something that people naturally just have. They're not born with it and they remain confident their entire lives. It's a practice. It's a discipline. It's just like Taoism. You have to really be disciplined in making sure you're cultivating that sense of confidence in yourself. So once you have that list, you can work on other things. One list that I've recently been working on is my biggest regrets in life. And this is so powerful for me. I've written every regret I ever had in life, and then I tried to see what was the hidden lesson in that. What has it shown me about myself? And even just that simple exercise of writing that list has helped me release the stuck emotions that are associated with it. And I've become more free and I've become more confident, and I don't have to look at my past as something that has been burdened with shame or guilt.
Thanks for sharing that great tip. And if our listeners wanted to get to know a little bit more about you and what you do and check out some of your work, is there any links or social media profiles we can connect with?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at Olivia M as in May. That's my middle name. And then Wong. So Olivia M. Wong on Instagram. And I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook using the same handle.
Thanks for sharing that. And to our listeners, if you want to connect with Olivia, you can also head on over to the taoofselfconfidence.com and search for Olivia's name. Her show notes will pop up along with everything else that we talked about. And I really just want to thank Olivia today for taking the time to share her story and tips with us on self-confidence. So thank you so much, Olivia.
Thank you so much, Sheena. It was great being with you today.
Not a problem. It's also great having you on the show today. And to our listeners, be on the lookout for another new episode of another amazing woman's journey to self-confidence. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another amazing episode of The Tao of Self-Confidence. Visit our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com to check out cool resources, blog articles, show recaps, and so much more. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits.